You're listening to Dodge Movie Podcast. Your hosts are Christy and Mike Dodge, the founders of Dodge Media Productions. We produce films and podcasts, so this is a podcast about films. Join them as they share their passion for filmmaking.
We really appreciate your reviews because they help us out in the all-elusive algorithm that is Apple Podcasts, but nonetheless, they do help us out. So we'd like to read our latest review that we got, and in appreciation to all of our listeners out there, we would love even more.
So this listener is named Dawn, and I think he's a very, very smart person. Listen to this review. Wow, these two are engaging. And the fact they're a couple and light banter and film knowledge lets us in on behind the scenes. What a wonderful podcast experience. Thank you, Don. What a wonderful review.
Thanks, Don. This could be you guys. We'll read it on the air. Please give us a review. We really appreciate it. Thanks. Welcome back, everybody, to this week of our celebrating our mothers. And today we are going to talk about the movie Baby Boom. It is a movie from 1987 starring Diane Keaton and Sam Shepard. Other cast members include Harold Ramis, James Spader, a very young James Spader, as well as a very young Christopher Noth of Sex and the City fame, and a very, very young Victoria Jackson, I believe pre-SNL or very early SNL Victoria Jackson for all you in our generation. Everybody else, look Victoria Jackson up.
Yeah, she probably did some work with Sally Struthers back in the day.
Yeah. They could have played sisters, mother, daughter. Definitely
maybe
sisters.
auntie and niece.
Before we get started into this movie, I want to say that we would love to hear from you. So if you want to ask us a question, leave a comment, we could play it here on the podcast. Our phone number is 971-245-4148. And we would love to hear from some of you, and we might play it on air. So again, that's 971-245-4148. We would love to hear from you.
Hey, fun fact. Did you know that most phone numbers in the movies are 555 numbers because that's not real?
Right.
So it doesn't go anywhere.
Right. And it's so annoying. The minute I start hearing it, it's like, be creative. I've seen some creative ways that they cut out phone numbers so that they can seem like they're giving out a true phone number. And I enjoy that. I appreciate it as a viewer.
And it's really kind of irrelevant now because no one actually knows phone numbers. Like we used to have to memorize 7 digits for everything, right?
Yeah.
And there is actually, I think, an episode in the last season of The American Office where Michael Scott loses his phone. And the joke is he can't remember a number. Even if he borrowed a phone, he doesn't know who to call.
That's so true, though. That's so true. You just hit mom. You don't.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy.
Yeah. Before we get into this episode, I want to mention another mom-centered movie because we like to choose comedies to keep things lighthearted here on the podcast. This one is anything but it is a fabulous movie. It's called Stepmom, starring Susan Sarandon and Julia Roberts. Bring your box of hankies. You will need a whole box, but it is a very, very good film. The synopsis for Baby Boom is the life of super yuppie JC is thrown into turmoil when she inherits a baby from a distant relative. The tagline is, JC Wiatt, corporate powerhouse, just received an inheritance, and it sucks.
What were the 80s like that we just gave babies away?
Not gave away, inherited. It's valuable.
Right, she never met this baby before and the state gives it to her?
Yeah.
I feel like this is how sweatshops were born.
Possibly. That's where we got a lot of the recruits. This movie is written by Nancy Meyers, who also wrote It's Complicated and Something's Gotta Give, The Holiday and the Intern. Very talented writer, very prolific. She's actually married to the director, Charles Shire, who also directed Father of the Bride 2, Alfie, and Irreconcilable Differences.
Being married to somebody is a great way to get your film made.
It is. It's also a great way to get a job is to be married to the director. So, Mike, what's the pickup line for this film?
53% of the American workforce is female.
Ah, and isn't it that iconic New York scene where it's the bustling sidewalks?
Yeah, sure. I'm thinking Tootsie and 9 to 5, that kind of thing.
We watched this movie a few weeks ago, but my memory is a lot of women like hailing cabs.
Right, walking in their like business attire, but with their sneakers on because they have to walk 28 blocks through Manhattan, that kind of thing.
Exactly. The other thing in this film was a lot of haze, a lot of fog machines were used
Oh my
in the
gosh.
making of this movie.
In my cinematography notes, it's just more fog, more fog, more fog. Wow, they went nuts with the fog machine.
Yes. In the show don't tell category, when she goes to the little sweet town that we now know was in Vermont, all of the townspeople are saying hi after she's been there a couple weeks. And so to me, it's the filmmaker saying she's now one of them, because as she walks down the street, it's kind of like Norm in the Cheers bar. Everybody
Norm.
is welcoming her.
Yeah, I did like her line, "I have had it with whiskers and plaid."
The writing of this film, it's your classic rom-com. She's your independent and annoyed with the male lead when she first meets him.
Yeah, except that their first meeting is like an hour and 10 minutes into the film.
Yeah,
So,
that is definitely out of character for your classic rom-com.
right, but it is very 80s in that they set her up as a working woman, mover and shaker. She's some sort of executive level, right?
Yes.
Big shoulder pads tell us she's powerful.
Oh, very big shoulder pads.
But they establish early on, in one of the first scenes that we see her, she tells her assistant that she has to work the weekend, and she's tossing out a bunch of acronyms. So she's obviously too busy to even use words.
Yep. It's your classic fish out of water. She's
Oh, yeah.
dressed up in her suit while caring for the baby and trying to take her to business meetings while still maintaining her current lifestyle, taking care of this child.
For people so smart, they're pretty stupid, though.
Yeah, that's true. Well, was there not childcare in this day and era? It was the 80s. There had to have been a nanny or two roaming the streets of New York City she could have grabbed.
There's no way J.C. Wiatt was cleaning her own apartment. She could have hired somebody to take care of the baby.
Yes. You throw the housekeeper a couple extra $100 and say you're a nanny now?
Surprise!
Yeah, totally.
I guess something does roll downhill.
Another feature that lets you know that this film is straight out of the 80s is the massive amounts of Art Deco in her apartment.
Oh, yeah. Nagel was the design consultant, maybe?
That
Okay.
and her shoulder pads. This movie is straight out of the 80s. I chose this movie because I had fond memories of it. It was a bit dated. I still felt like it was a sweet movie, and I appreciated that she kind of was... I was started to say she was triumphant, and then my feminist kind of voices started kicking in, like, was she though? Because
she had a business. Now it was a baby food or applesauce business, not whatever she was doing before.
and I don't think he saved her. He didn't swoop in and save her. She pretty much...
I don't think he gave a crap. I mean, about the business.
Yeah, I think it was more her coming to terms with deciding that the lifestyle she thought she wanted, which was the mover and shaker and the one to get the big client, the big fish, and to be praised at her, was it advertising firm, I think? I don't think she was a
Again,
lawyer.
it's very 80s. It's kind of nebulous what she does.
Yeah, but she realizes that there's more to life, and she wants to live in the sleepy little Vermont town and make her applesauce and raise her child and have a life with the town veterinarian.
Right. So from the perspective of kind of an 80s movie, it works like that. But I can kind of see what you're saying, that it is a little bit of kind of a soft victory. There's not really that sense of, domination or, some big fireworks moment where you say, okay, so she overcame her challenges.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because it came about in the era that we have, Gordon Gekko and Secret of My Success and things like that, where the message was a little bit different, that she's moving to the sleepy Vermont town and kind of getting out of the rat race.
And following on the heels of the feminist movement, I mean, this is like the height of Gloria Steinem. I do feel like, well, let's see, it was a female writer, right?
Nancy Myers, you
yeah,
said?
It's a female writer. Maybe she's saying, like, women, we can have it all. We can be the power broker in our own way, because she was an entrepreneur. She had her own company. It wasn't like she was going to Vermont and just gonna, raise chickens or whatever. She was still going to have a business. She was still going to use all her acumen that she got in the big city. She was just going to use it in a way that she could have a more fulfilling life.
Yeah, but that also, I think, contributes to this idea of women have to do both. Be this powerful business person, entrepreneur, and be this mother who makes homemade applesauce. So it is, in that sense, maybe not quite so feminist, right? Pushing a different agenda. And it could very well be that Nancy Myers had no agenda. She was just writing a story.
It's possible, But I think we have to go back and look at the time that Nancy wrote this. And maybe it is more that it's a comment on what was being told to women back then, that you can have it all and you can work a 40-hour-a-week job and still be a mom. And maybe Nancy herself was even starting to realize, like, oh, no, you can't. Or you can have it, but you have to craft it. And so that's what I was saying, is she crafted a way that she could still be a business person and use her mind and be active and feel like she's making a difference while still raising her child, I guess is what I was trying to say earlier.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. I was just kind of comparing it to the idea that a woman has to have this business career part being successful in some sort of monetary way for her to be fulfilled, right? And so I'm not saying this should be the case, but what if that character, J.C. Wiatt, had decided, look, this kind of is not for me to have to deal with this. I just want to be a mom.
Right.
And so the vet's going to, do the vet thing, and we'll live in this cute little farmhouse, and I'll just take care of the kid. And
except for I just take slight objection with just a mom, because I don't know if I worked harder maybe when I was only a mom versus a business owner. But
I want to be clear. I'm not saying just a mom. I'm saying in this film that would have been just.
Right.
Because we're seeing J.C. Wiatt do both things. And that's fine if she wants to do both things. I was just bringing it up for contrast to what we see in the film, right? And so is Nancy Meyers trying to find this middle ground between the character in the first act when she's working 80 hours a week. It shows her and Harold Ramis reading financial reports in bed before they go to sleep. So she's working 80, 100, 120 hours a week, just ridiculous, unsustainable hours. And so the obvious opposite in that spectrum would be work 0 hours a week. So is the film trying to kind of find this balance between the two?
Right. And a little wrinkle is because she is not married, it's all on her. She has to be the sole breadwinner. She doesn't have this applesauce company because it's a cute little thing she can do. She's supporting her daughter and herself.
And we see that scene where she talks to the guy about, I think it's the plumbing. It's out in the yard in the snow, and how many thousands of dollars and weeks is it going to be? So definitely we're turning up the pressure on the character of JC in that she now is completely on her own and fish out of water in a second sense, right? First with the baby, and then now in this sleepy town in Vermont.
Right.
So the good news is that there is a gay character in the film who has lines. The bad news is he's pretty swishy. So
very stereotypical.
Yeah, for the 80s, it was good that they put the character there, but it was still, they were struggling to represent them, the gay characters, I should say, not them, as full-fledged people that were part of the kind of the milieu. But it was nice that there's at least something there. We see some comedy with Harold Ramis, who I think this is one of the few times he acted in a film that he did not direct. He does this character that kind of, it's not a Bellamy in the rom-com sense classically. He's almost a comic foil. And I really liked the scene where after he tells her he can't do this anymore and he moves out, that you just see that the chairs are left. He took the dining room table, but not the dining room chairs. Like, why would you do that, right? I mean, it is kind of funny. And then there's this
a good sight gag.
Yeah, there is. And there's this funny bit where she says after like 4 minutes of lovemaking, and he says something like, oh, that was incredible. So it was really, I think, playing off of his kind of demeanor, right, as this nerdy kind of guy that he's just got no juice going on, nothing. And I do feel sorry for actors when their agent comes to them and says, we need someone to be not the handsome leading man. That's got to be kind of rough. Like, what am I, chopped liver? But they're trying to kind of contrast him to Sam Shepard at the end of the film. So he really comes across that way. And there's a good sight gag. There's a reveal of the pig where the curtain is pulled back. So there are some funny things that are going on in the film. And I have to say, from a cinematography standpoint, this is not a standard rom-com. There's a lot of camera movement. We already mentioned a ton of fog. There's really a lot going on with this cinematography that you wouldn't expect in a rom-com. Right. And so that I thought was really kind of fascinating from the director and the cinematographer to actually do those things, including you had some of the classic kind of gelled look on Diane Keaton, right? As well as we talked about the fog. And also, fun fact about filming is in order to get the baby sleeping, they would turn the lights down to let the baby go to sleep and then slowly turn them back up until they were bright enough to film. I thought that was a clever trick.
That's a lot of patience for a film set. I can't believe that.
Right. Yeah, everybody be quiet.
Yeah. Well, it's just time is money and people just go crazy when it's just stagnant. So that's amazing. The one scene that I thought was really good with the baby at the end, she's on the phone with her New York City boss, Fritz, and he's now offered her the job of a lifetime, the job she's always dreamed of. And she is super excited because this is obviously something that she has been working towards and looking forward to, and it's finally come to fruition. And they just cut to the baby. And I thought it was really good editing because it reminds the audience, like, because we're kind of on that ride with her. We're like, oh my gosh, she got it. She finally got it. And then it's like, oh, but wait, you have this baby and you have this life. Because now I think it's even the morning after her and Sam Shepard get together. And so the stakes are so high and it's like, what is she going to do? I thought it was really well done because it wasn't like, what was the movie where the babies talked?
Look Who's Talking.
Yeah, it wasn't cheesy like that. Like the baby didn't go "Rrr," like or make any noises or like it
Right.
wasn't for the laugh. It was simply cut to the baby, remind the audience what's on the line, cut back to her being excited. I really enjoyed that editing so that it wasn't over the top and cheesy.
Right, and there was a certain amount of the plotting that was a little bit stereotypical in that the person that we'd seen, earlier in the film came back and there was going to be this buyout and everything like that. So that was fairly straightforward, but I do agree that that was not stereotypical in that shot, in the way that was portrayed, right? To show just the baby itself without having explicit dialogue like the comic best friend saying like, oh, what are you going to do? Or like you said, the baby with the look or even a music cue. It was just a simple shot.
Yeah, just a cut to.
So you mentioned a little something about showing the baby. And so what I noticed was early in the film, the kind of Act 1, Act 2 J.C. Wiatt character is wearing a lot of black and white, and her apartment has a lot of black and white and very geometric shapes. And Elizabeth, who's the baby, if I recall, comes in wearing red. And so when you see J.C. Wiatt make the face turn at the back half of the film, she now starts wearing earth tones, which kind of makes sense if you're living in Vermont, right? A lot of LL Bean shopping going on. But also you'll see the same palette come back with the Sam Shepard character, right? Seeing that transition from the very stark black and white world into this kind of plaid and khakis kind of world. But also black and white and red are those common colors, especially with big geometric shapes for babies to help them with their visual processing. So I thought that was really clever in both the set design and the costuming.
Yeah, and there is that scene when she comes back to have like the final meeting with Fritz and she's walking through the office. So she's been in Vermont and she's walking through the office in the earth tone suit now. And I thought the scene went on a little long. Everybody's like turning their heads and they're like, oh my gosh, she looks so great. Isn't it amazing? And she's been breathing the miraculous country air and it's just made her so much more beautiful. It was like a shampoo ad. It went on a little bit too long for me. But I thought another way of a good show don't tell, like remind the audience like Vermont was good for her and people are noticing it.
Right. Look at that glow of her skin. You said a shampoo commercial, which is definitely what it would have been in the 80s. But nowadays, that would be a drug commercial, right? That's what it looks like. Oh my gosh, her skin glows. What has she been taking?
Like a vitamin.
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny. I recognize A Kiss to Build a Dream On from the Sleepless. I say it's from the Sleepless in Seattle soundtrack, but I'm sure that I thought that was kind of fun that it was used in another one of the films that we reviewed. What about a driving review? Was there any driving in this film?
There was a little bit of driving. One thing that I noticed immediately is they use this wood-paneled Jeep Grand Wagoner when she moves to Vermont. That apparently was like our cue that now she's really living in the sticks because she's got to get this big
wood-paneled
wood-paneled wagon, right? The veterinarian drives a 30-year-old Chevrolet Apache pickup, which I maybe would make sense for that character, but it just seemed like it was like almost like putting him on a Harley Davidson. It was a little on the nose for my taste. But the one thing from the driving, as I would say, is when she is returning from New York for the meeting and she's driving that Jeep, based on the dust cloud behind it, she's going way too damn fast for that road. So I'm thinking the stunt driver had a lot of fun, but maybe tone it down a little bit. I think she's got a baby in there. Which does bring up the question, though, of I sincerely hope that that wasn't a baby in some of those shots, but was just a very small stunt person, because there are some things with that baby that I can't believe we could even do in the 80s, and we shouldn't be able to do now. So when
you were very concerned
very
for
concerned.
this baby.
So like right away when she first meets the baby, she's walking around holding her with one hand upside down. Okay. And having held a couple babies in my life with one hand, they slip out really easy. And that girl's head was right to the floor if she slipped out. I hope that poor girl didn't get any head trauma. But there's also a little incident of the thermometer.
We're going to talk about it.
We have to bring this up. It is inappropriate.
It was disturbing you.
Very much so. And so parents know that there are 2 ways to take a temperature with the thermometer. One's under the tongue, and they went the other direction, and they shot that. I mean, we can know it happened, but we didn't need to see it.
I'm trying to decide how much I want to comment.
Yeah, it's just, we talk about it because it did disturb me. I can't believe they shot that and left it in the film. I just can't.
I think there was some sleight of hand. Let's say, I don't think that Diane actually took the baby's temperature. I'll say that.
Okay, but if you're going to do that, you do the close-up on Diane to show the comic reaction. We don't need to see, no matter...
Tushy.
Yeah, that's just, no.
I'm not arguing with you. I definitely think you're correct. I don't think they would shoot it that way today. I think they would steer clear, but I don't think that the baby was violated.
I should hope not. So another category from the Can't Make This Today, in the comic interviewing of Nanny scene, right?
Yes.
There's a really incredibly stereotypical portrayal of a German woman. And I was thinking, all the things we're sensitive about now, apparently it's still cool to make fun of Germans.
Were there other ethnicities that she interviewed?
There might have been. I just happened to make a note about the poor Germans. Like, apparently it's fair game. It's open season on the Germans. Come on. Let's give them a break.
Oh my gosh. Was there head trauma? I feel like there was a scene right when she went to the farm, but I can't remember any.
I actually don't have head trauma, but I do have a kick in the nuts at 30 minutes in when the baby cries after being handed to the hillbilly parents.
Oh, who kicks who?
I wish I remembered who.
Oh, okay.
I just made a note of kick in the nuts, which, by the way, I guess also you can make fun of hillbillies, not just Germans.
Yes.
So to be fair.
Hillbillies are on the table.
Also open season on hillbillies.
And I did not write down a smoochie count, but I know there was a nice smoochie between her and Sam Shepard.
Smoochy, smoochy, smoochy. Yeah, 1 hour and 19 minutes in, they really pushed the ROM to the tail end of this film.
Yes, it was. And you know what I liked? Like you said earlier, not Sam Shepard, but Harold Ramis wasn't the Bellamy. He wasn't like a jerk. It's just like they were now no longer for each other because he was very much on that no kid track. And then now she has a kid. So he's just like, oh, I can't. I'm out.
Right. And compared to another film that famously has a very late meeting between the two, Sleepless in Seattle, but there we see Tom Hanks throughout the whole film. It's just that Meg Ryan doesn't.
Yes.
But in this case, we don't even see Sam Shepard until an hour and 10 minutes into the film. That, to me, is a weird... I shouldn't say weird. It's just out of the ordinary. It's a unique way to approach the story.
Right. All right. Should we go to the numbers?
Let's go to the numbers.
All right. This movie's budget was $15 million and it made $26 million. So just shy of doubling their investment, which is pretty good for United Artists. It is listed as a comedy drama romance rated PG and just under 2 hours at 150. Its IMDb score was 6.3 and on Rotten Tomatoes it gets a 76, which is probably fair.
Mm-hmm.
There's a great scene with Charo on Johnny Carson, and anyone under the age of 40 probably don't know who either of those people are.
Gucci, Gucci, Gucci.
Yeah. This was kind of part of a cavalcade of comedies in the early 80s featuring moms. There was Mr. Mom in 83, this one, Baby Boom in 87, and Three Men and a Baby also in 87.
Classic hijinks. Men can't figure out diapers. What?
What to do with a bare butt?
So 3 Men and a Baby had Tom Selleck in it. So, I want to be a little bit more favorably disposed to it. But it was kind of sexist because those guys were also pretty stupid when it comes down to it.
There's a quote I wrote down. I like it. She's trying to convince Harold Ramis that they can raise this child. And she goes, now look, there's nothing in the world to get uptight about. We are two summa cum laudes. We can handle one little baby for 8 hours. I like it. So that's it for this week, everybody. Thank you for joining us for Baby Boom. Join us next week when we kick off the month of June and our wedding movies. Check out our Facebook and Instagram to see that list. We will send it out on our newsletter. If you're not on our newsletter, drop us a line at Christy@DodgeMediaProductions.com and I'll get you on that newsletter so you know everything that's happening with the podcast. Rate us, review us, like us, share us, tell a friend, and give us a call at that phone number I left at the top of the podcast. We would love to hear from you. And remember,
Dodges never stop, and neither do the movies.
Thanks for listening to Dodge Movie Podcast with Christy and Mike Dodge of Dodge Media Productions. To find out more about this podcast and what we do, go to DodgeMediaProductions.com. Subscribe, share, leave a comment, and tell us what we should watch next. Dodges never stop, and neither do the movies.